Tom DeRosa of the Creation Studies Institute has dedicated his entire life to teaching God's truths. He and his team are working hard to counter the prevailing atheistic ideology that flows out of evolution.
Creation Studies Institute is an organization that affirms the Word of God. We want to reach the world of the truth of creation and the gospel of Jesus Christ. In our schools today, kids are being taught evolution, being taught things that are hypothetical, things that just, we kind of have the evidence, but when you look at the evidence, they're looking at it saying, wait. So they start questioning the rationality behind this. There is part of us that's saying, how can we come from chance? How can we come from random happenings? God is a God of order. He created an orderly universe. Science supports this kind of universe of law. Once we dismantle that, we take it away, then we have chaos and everything goes.
The Creation Studies Institute holds an annual event called the Weird and Wacky Summer Camp, with the purpose of teaching kids about God and the idea of intelligent design.
What's behind us is the Weird and Wacky Science Camp from a creation's perspective. We have students here who are learning about God's creation. We want to make an impression upon them. They have to see that God and creation is connected, that science is God's. Science and God come together, and that's what this camp is all about. All the exhibits here at the Creation Discovery Museum center on evidence that supports God as a creator. Over here we have a display of an Ice Age herd of mammoths. Now the Ice Age occurred, we believe, from the worldwide flood. We believe the worldwide flood gave us conditions to have an Ice Age. These are fossils that come from the northern part of Brazil near the Amazon. That's a fish, perfectly preserved. It speaks of a worldwide catastrophe. When you are able to show the attributes of God, the traits of God, that God is all powerful, He's all knowledgeable, they're dealing with these things and saying, wow, look, that comes from God. They get excited about God. They experience God.
I've learned a lot of things about God. I've learned that He always cares for us. The people here really go into detail for us to understand who Jesus is. I learned the ways to understand between evolution and what God created.
The idea of all our activities is that we want people, kids, especially kids, to be able to get excited about God so they can experience Him. Once they experience Him, they'll remember it forever.
Today, evolution is widely accepted as an indisputable scientific fact, and even taught in public schools, when in truth, it is nothing more than an unproven theory.
What changed in the late 1850s? Darwin's Origin of Species, the theory of evolution. No new evidence, just a whole new theory to which everything had to conform.
Evolution is an idea, and a lot of people are taught that it's science and it's part of the scientific method, but it's an idea, it's an ideology. And those who embrace this ideology under the guise of science is false. It's a myth.
It's not just about an idea of, one kind of animal changing into another. It's not just an idea of ape-like creatures supposedly changing into people. It's much more than that. It's really a whole way of thinking. It's really a philosophy of life. Actually, I would say it's really a religion to explain life without God.
Proponents of evolution claim that science and the Bible are incompatible. However, most of the founding fathers of modern science were men of faith.
The history of science traces back to this Christian motivation to learn about God's creation. Scientists were birthed out of Christianity. We all are familiar with Isaac Newton. And Sir Isaac Newton spent more time writing about the Bible and the prophecies of Daniel than he did on science.
These scientists didn't believe that nature was just a cosmic accident. Instead, they believed it was designed by a creator.
Science arises out of Christians who believe the universe is understandable because it's created by a God who loves order and beauty and who made it the way it is and made it in a way that we can understand it.
All the early Renaissance scientists that you're reading about in your textbook, and textbooks in astronomy were strong believers in design, such as Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo and Isaac Newton, and Boyle and Maxwell. All these were strong believers in a design universe, and it's only recently that that trend has changed.
These forefathers of modern science noted that much of the evidence for creation can be found all around us.
When we look in terms of the earth, we see that there is order. We see that when we look at the rocks. When you look at the Earth's crust, most of it is sedimentary rock. How did that sedimentary rock get there? That sedimentary rock, we believe, was caused by a worldwide flood. The Bible points to that very clearly. When we look in terms of the idea of man himself, man is extremely well endowed, gifted by God. He literally can think, he has emotions, he has a moral conscience, he's able to be creative. We look in terms of the idea of the universe, the idea of planets and the idea of stars and the idea, Isaac Newton said, hey, how could this happen? There had to be an intelligent designer. When we look in terms of the laws of the universe are carried out here on Earth. They're the same. So as we study the universe, as we look at the heavens, we see the order. We see a God that created things. As we study the earth, we see that God has been there.
While evidence for creation abounds, many point out the gaping holes in Darwin's theory.
And there's this idea today that if you see new species forming, that's evolution, and that's what Darwin was talking about. But see, Darwin was talking about much more than that. He was saying because we see changes happening in dogs or cats or pigeons or whatever it is, finches and so on, that given enough time, then you can change one kind into a totally different kind, and that's a whole different matter. In fact, if you take Darwin's finches, there's just been some research done to show that within, 16, 17 years, there's been a new species of finch formed. And by the way, it's still a finch, it's still a bird. And that's the whole point. So you can form new species, and you'll find that even today, when people are asked in universities, what's your best example of evolution? They'll give some example of speciation or Darwin's finches, but not an example where you get one kind changing into a whole different kind, like reptiles to birds or something like that. That's what you don't see.
Tom DeRosa and the Creation Studies Institute continue to do the important work of rescuing these younger generations from the grips of Darwin's dangerous ideology.
If you don't have parents that raise you with the idea of God, you're going to fall into this atheistic paradigm. We're going to have young people looking at a world that's very different.